Before I begin, I should mention that today's episode was recorded all the way back in December, as I was still working on my episodes for Krampus and my other Nickelodeon editorials. So yes, I will have another deep dive coming either next week or within 2 weeks, depending on my schedule. I'm sorry it's not as consistent as I would like to be. I still wanted to have something ready for you, at least today, just to tide you over until I have my next content ready, which I am getting very excited for, as it will be covering the 1980s cult classic, Santa Claus the Movie, which itself surprisingly has a lot of history tracing back all the way to the beginning of the Hollywood industry. But for now, I am really excited to finally bring about my interview with Natalie Bickel, who herself was a fantastic person to hear from, and her new book, A Christmas Clue, is now available to purchase on Amazon and most other bookseller websites. So, without further ado, let's get into it.
Marker. And action.
This is Behind the Bells, the show that takes you behind the magic of your favorite Christmas movies and shows. Within the background of every Santa Claus, reindeer, and stocking is a story. Where did it come from? Our Christmas movie expert will unravel all of that and give you the full story. Sit back and enjoy another episode with Robert Nicholas.
Merry Monday, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Bells. I'm your host, Robert Nicholas, and I'll be taking you on another one-horse open sleigh ride into the world of Christmas movies. Today, folks, I got you another special treat. We have another interview. That's right. We are doing 2 interviews in the same month. So, without giving you too much of a delay, let's bring in our guest, Natalie Bickel.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. There was snow outside today, so I'm feeling in the spirit.
Oh, I bet so. I envy you because down here in Southern California, we have plenty of sunshine, but no snow.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty much all melted now. But this morning it was a little light dusting, so it was great in Indiana.
I kind of want to be in Indiana right now just so I can get that extra Christmas snow glow. Because if I want snow, I need to drive 3 hours out of my way just to do so.
Oh, I bet.
But yeah, anyway, Natalie, you're on my show because you have written a brand new children's Christmas book called The Christmas Clue.
Yep. Yeah. I'm really, really excited about it. It's not out quite just yet, but it's supposed to be out before Christmas. So I know we're getting down to the wire, but the book was inspired by a Christmas tradition that my dad created for my brother and I growing up. He would create this scavenger hunt on Christmas morning for us to find our last gift. And so it started with a clue in the tree, and then we would run around the house finding all these other clues that led to our last present.
Okay, and of course, without a beat, would you say that's like the short version of the plot of The Christmas Clue?
Yes, of course. The only difference is that Santa hides the clues for the children in the book, not their dad.
That's cool. Because it's funny you should mention that because I used to do scavenger hunts like that as a kid, though they would always roll around my birthdays. We never had a Christmas scavenger hunt. Was that something that you and your family did every year?
Yeah, my dad started it when my brother and I were, I think, in elementary school, and we still do it to this day. So I'm married now, my brother's married, and our spouses are both involved as well. And I think they kind of have a love-hate relationship with it, just because whenever we get the clue, we read it aloud first, and then we go race to the location, and then we read them aloud again. And so my husband hates reading out loud in front of people, and he's like, this is the worst tradition.
Yeah, I can definitely tell that it's really passionate for you because as I was going through the Christmas Clue, I will say I love the little clues that were written in as if they were something I would find on a treasure map clue, like something out of National Treasure or something, but something that obviously a lot of kids could pick up themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dad actually wrote those clues. So I had to tweak them a little bit so that they would apply to everyone. But yeah, he wrote most of those.
And as you were writing those books, were you kind of hoping that in a way some of the kids themselves would try to solve the clues before turning the page or so?
Yes, that's the goal. I hope that kids can just kind of put it together and think, okay, where could this be? Even though, they're not like technically in the house that's in the book, I think it's pretty universally understandable for kids.
Yeah, I think so, because I certainly at least got the gist of it while reading the text version since, as of today, I haven't seen the illustrations yet since you said they weren't ready.
Right.
Can you give us an idea of what kind of artwork are we going to be seeing through it?
Oh my goodness, I just got a preview of it yesterday and it looked so, so good. So my illustrator is through my publisher, Pennant Publications, and her name is Abira Das, and she does just like amazing, amazing work. It's hard to describe it without seeing it. Since this is obviously a podcast and not a YouTube show, but they're just so colorful and it really captures the spirit of Christmas, of like little kids running around a house and just excitement on their faces and their eyes lighting up. And it's really amazing how she brought it together.
At least with the artwork that's going into this book, is there another Christmas children's book that you can maybe compare it to give us kind of a visual idea?
Let me think here. It kind of reminds me of, what is the name of it? It's this book with two snowmen that come to life. I'm failing you right now.
That's okay. But speaking of which, when it comes to Christmas children's books, obviously, given that you got a degree in journalism already, why did you want to do a children's Christmas book to publish?
Yeah. So like you said, my background is in journalism. I've written for a few publications, and then I actually have written a young adult novel. And after I had finished that and gone through several rounds of editing and started querying agents to get it published, I thought, okay, what's my next thing that I want to be working on? What's my next writing project? And Christmas had just happened. And so it came to mind, oh my gosh, this would be an amazing children's book to take this tradition that my dad has created and made so fun for us and share it with other kids in hopes that it creates this sense of wonder that maybe they haven't experienced before.
Tell me about the young adult book that you wrote before.
Yeah, so it's actually not published yet either. I'm still in the process of trying to get an agent. So it's been a very lengthy process, but it took me about a year to write the book, and it's inspired by my own love story with my husband. But basically, it's about a recent college graduate who has this head full of dreams and wants and aspirations, and she can't figure out how to get any traction in her life. And all of these thoughts tend to multiply and overwhelm her, and she blacks out. And so the only thing that kind of keeps her sane is this opal necklace that was passed down through generations in her family, and it actually is magical. And so she can metaphorically put her thoughts into her necklace, and that kind of keeps her blackout episodes at bay. And all of that is happening until she meets Clay, who is this guy who lives in the town that she's in, which is in North Carolina, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And whenever she meets him, things start to seem clearer, and she can start to see a clearer path and kind of where she wants to go. And she doesn't realize that Clay actually has access to her necklace. And when he holds it, he can see her thoughts. And so what she thinks is just coincidence. He's kind of manipulating situations to be what he thinks she wants out of life. So that's a brief summary.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, it sounds very sweet. I'm going to be curious about seeing how that one turns out. Now, given that that one hasn't been published yet, and yet you're getting this children's book published, are you looking to primarily be a children's book author, or do you have any other major novels you like to try looking into writing later on?
It's funny because I didn't expect this book to come out before my young adult novel, since I had just worked so hard on that novel way before my children's book. But after writing this book, I have had several different ideas that have come up, and I'm like, ooh, that could be a good children's book. Ooh, that could be good. So I've got this running document of potential ones for the future, but I haven't really fleshed any of them out yet. I just kind of want to see how the process goes with this one.
Yeah, that's understandable because I'm an aspiring writer myself, and I've got a whole bunch of other things in the idea bank. Some of them have been written down, some of them not, but eventually I am looking to get at least maybe one of them published or so.
Yeah, very
nice.
cool. Yes.
But yeah, tell me about your background in writing. What was it that really, sparked your interest in writing overall?
I think writing has always been a part of my life, and I don't think I realized it until now that I'm older and I'm able to kind of reflect back. But I remember even in elementary school, I was writing in English, the English portion of our classes. I was writing things that were so much longer than my other classmates. Like one project was about writing about your room. And I remember it, like we had to handwrite back then, and mine was 9 pages front and back. And then the teacher would edit and then we'd have to handwrite it again. And I just remember always like wanting to write more and always having stories in my head. But I didn't really realized that writing was my passion until college, when I started taking news writing classes and journalism classes, and those just really felt like a fit for me. And that opened the door to other opportunities, such as writing for my college newspaper, The Cardinal, and then from there writing for a pop culture publication called The Celebrity Cafe. And so I feel like I just kind of got my groove, and then I started my blog for any pieces that weren't necessarily acceptable for either publication that I was working with. And since then, I've also written for Darling magazine, which is all about the art of being a woman and showcasing different lived experiences. And so I feel like, writing is kind of just part of how I process the world. And the more people I meet and the more places I go, the more I have to write about, because in those moments, inspiration is floating all around. It's in the air, it's in the setting I'm in, and it's in the details of the people.
And that's what I love, considering how subjective writing can be. Because I myself, actually, even though I myself love doing writing on the spare time, that was something I actually was not even as interested in until way later in high school, where I didn't even know that I had that much of a passion in writing myself. Now,
Very cool.
when you were actually doing your writing back in high school and college, did you have any specific teachers or professors that really helped you find your voice?
Yeah, I had a news writing professor, and I guess I didn't realize how good my writing was until I took his class, and he pulled me aside one day and he was like, "Hey, your work is amazing. Like, let's get you involved in our student newspaper." And I was so shocked. I was like, "What? Like, you want me to write for the paper?" And so he gave me that confidence of, "Hey, your voice matters and you're doing great work. So keep it up and keep fine-tuning your craft."
Awesome. And of course, I got to ask every other author, who are some of your favorite authors?
Okay, I love Becca Fitzpatrick.
Okay.
She is the author of the Hush Hush series. It was like my favorite series in high school. It's all about fallen angels, so you may not have read it or heard of it. Kind of like along the lines of Twilight, but not quite that far. And then I also really love Kristen Hanna. She, one of my favorite books by her is The Nightingale, and she is just so good at creating characters, and you like never question, wait, who's this person again? It's so crystal clear of who they are. They just embody like real people when you're reading it.
Okay, yeah. It's important to really know who, exactly which authors are the ones that have been the one to giving you those aha moments. I mean, for me, it was always anything written by Ray Bradbury.
Oh yeah, he's great too. So many quotes by him are amazing.
Yeah, to me, he's an author who really knows how to capture nostalgia properly, without either taking a pro or con side, more of an ambiguous side. Because I will say that one of the books that ironically actually led me to starting this podcast was The Halloween Tree. I don't know if you ever read that one. Okay, yeah, and in fact, one of the books I'm looking to publish, which ironically, given that I'm a holiday podcaster, is going to be Halloween centered.
Oh, cool! Very cool.
Yeah, and even though I don't want to disclose any details on that just yet,
Yes.
That does lead me into another interesting area. Given how obviously we got you've got the next big children's Christmas book coming out. What are some of your other favorite children's Christmas books?
Yes. Okay. So there are so many that I read as a kid, and I still have them at my parents' house. They're like in a box, and I'll occasionally pull them out from year to year. But one of my all-time favorites is, of course, The Night Before Christmas. And my dad would always read it on Christmas Eve, and it would be the pop-up version, which just added another element. Of course, The Polar Express is a classic. There was this one book that we had that was huge, and it was called My Getting Ready for Christmas book. And it wasn't as much of a story as it was like a seek and find. And there's all these different like puzzles on each page of like find Santa. It was almost like a Where's Waldo on one page. And then another page is like finding the 12 Days of Christmas scattered in this scenery. And I think that might have maybe subconsciously inspired the Christmas Clue, because it's like finding things and solving a puzzle. And then another one that I really like is called Carl's Christmas, and it's actually just pictures, and it's this big dog. And there's only words in the very beginning, and it's the parents leaving the house, I guess, on Christmas Eve to go shopping. And they're telling Carl, the dog, to take care of this baby. And then the whole book is just Carl, like, taking the baby to different places. And I like that one because it allows kids and the readers to really make up the story and the words on their own.
Oh, yeah. It's funny you mention that, because I actually had those books, too, when I was really little myself.
Yeah.
And of course, once I aged out of them, they actually went to my younger cousins, who themselves enjoyed it at that age. And
Aww.
maybe it's because I also got a soft spot for Rotties in general.
Yes.
He's
a big dog.
They are, yeah. But it is just interesting how, those, little books like that, even if they're not as critically acclaimed or even noticed as something like The Polar Express or The Night Before Christmas, they still hold, that much of an impact on a lot of people in order to really spark the imagination.
Yes, for sure. And I feel like the illustrations just are so beautiful and really allow for that imagination.
Yeah, and that can be the difficult thing, too, with a lot of children's books, because even though the text part is just as important, it wasn't until I really gave another good read through The Polar Express back in college, where I was taking a class on creative writing, where I basically got the notion where every illustration itself almost had to be a work of art itself, where the story could still work on its own without the text. Yeah, for sure. It really helps guide it. Exactly, and something like those Carl books is a true test of that. Now, also, speaking of Christmas, so given that my show tends to be much more film or TV based, what are some of your favorite Christmas movies? Yes, I love Elf. That came out when I was in, I think, 4th grade, and I remember seeing it in the movie theater, and it's just so good. I just feel Will Ferrell's level of excitement in regards to Santa, so that's one of my favorites. Also, Home Alone, watch it every year. And then The Santa Claus with Tim Allen, the first one, is really, really good and near and dear to my heart. Those are probably my top 3 movies. But yeah, given how Home Alone itself was itself a movie that was meant to be kind of small, but eventually, did so well at the box office that it's now just a major Christmas classic. That's just more proof that half the time the people that go into this really understand that it's always important to create a Christmas story that's going to feel much more personal. And for something like the case of Home Alone, which is a story all about this little kid who's left home alone, only to realize just how much he really needs his family around the holidays, or even like Elf with Will Ferrell's character, who himself is trying to find his real family after he discovers, shockingly, he's not an elf. Right. No, yeah, for sure. And I think the element of nostalgia is so important in those stories. And I actually listened to your episode on Home Alone, and there were so many things that I didn't know about it and the process of it, and how John Hughes wrote most of it like 10 days and didn't feel like he was writing fast enough. And all of that was just so fascinating. Yeah, because John Hughes has always been one of my favorite writers in general, because he was one of the few guys who I always felt understood the language of the youth. He knew how to write for kids. He knew how to cast the right actors to play those kids. And yeah, even though Home Alone is not his movie, that was Chris Columbus's movie. But it certainly has his fingerprints all over when it comes to a lot of the overall language, especially with the John Candy cameo towards the end as Gus Polinski.
Yeah. Yep.
And of course, that also leads to another fun question. Could you see this children's book of yours adapted maybe into like a holiday short or something?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it definitely has the potential to be a little film or a little special where it showcases the story and really shows the kids' excitement and running around. I feel like it could be maybe like a 30-minute special would be a sweet spot.
Yeah, I could see that too. And also, would you personally rather have it live action or animated?
Ooh, I think live action, but I have no idea who I would want casted.
Well, that's okay.
I think live action, like for example, Home Alone, like Kevin McAllister, like he just brings the story to life. So I'm a sucker for live action.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that too, because I tend to be a sucker for animation myself. And
Okay.
And even with some of the like really bad holiday specials that I've watched over the years, some of them just to me have a lot more appeal than a lot of the live action specials, because there's just a lot more you can get away with animation, and I think that's why a lot of children's Christmas books tend to be important within that factor.
That's true.
Because I will say that one of my other favorite Christmas stories that I for some reason I haven't seen brought up as recently as it used to be was Dr. Seuss's How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Oh, yeah. I really like the new one they did that's animated.
Oh, the one with Benedict Cumberbatch?
I believe so, yes. And like Max is so cute in it, getting the coffee like every morning. Is that the right one?
Yeah, it is.
Yes. It's so good.
Yeah, because usually people always also, because I know that movie was also, a big hit, which is, a nice win for Christmas fans like us, because it's now, I think it's now, I don't know if it's necessarily the highest grossing animated movie of all time, because I think that still goes to Frozen 2 or so, but
okay.
I do know that the Grinch, that at least the animated Grinch is up there.
Yeah.
And of course, before that, the live action Grinch with Jim Carrey for the longest time was also the highest grossing Christmas movie of all time.
Yes, I thoroughly enjoy that one too, but my brother and my dad quote it like all throughout the year, not even just at Christmas time. And it's like kind of burnt it a little for me. I'm like, all right, enough. Like, I know Jim Carrey's funny in the way he delivers things, but let me just watch it at Christmas time because you're killing it.
Yeah, and I actually cannot wait to do an episode on that live action Grinch movie, since that too went through a bit of a process between different directors, and of course learning about how Jim Carrey absolutely hated being under all that makeup and fur. So,
oh yeah, didn't it take like 8 hours to put it on every day or something? Maybe not
that long, but a long time. He had to come in at pretty early, and apparently he just felt so claustrophobic about it. He even had to go find counseling from a Navy SEAL on torture-resisting techniques.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it makes sense though, because it doesn't look like Jim Carrey when you see it. Like it looks like the Grinch. So I only see Jim Carrey when I hear him open his mouth, and still it's just like, how is that Jim Carrey in there?
Yeah, well, Jim Carrey's the kind of actor who knows how to, move his body enough where, his Grinch outfit just really feels like a skin, which is funny you mentioned that too, because when I was thinking about Elf, I remember when I went to go see that movie on that opening weekend, it also came out against that live action Cat in the Hat movie with Mike Myers.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not sure why I did this, but when I was with my family at the time, we were choosing between Elf and Cat in the Hat, and I actually had wanted to see Elf, but that had already been sold out the entire night, so we were forced to see the Cat in the Hat.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it was. And then, of course, the next night we sat through Elf, which, again, even with all the marketing, I knew very little about the movie itself at the time. But as soon as I saw it, I thought, this is really funny. It's just great. It's just a really, really funny and endearing Christmas movie. Yeah. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that the film itself is Also kind of a nice tribute to those old Rankin Bass specials.
Oh, yes, with the claymation type. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah, and even the outfit that Will Ferrell's buddy wears is actually the exact same uniform worn in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That is so cool.
Yeah, and it's just those fun little tidbits that really shows that director Jon Favreau really cared about that little attention to detail to include that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and maybe that's why he's kind of the go-to guy for a lot of the creative rejuvenation. It's like, give us a new Christmas classic. Here's Elf. Give us a brand new superhero movie. Here's Iron Man. It'll start up the whole MCU for you. Or give us a brand new Star Wars story. Here's The Mandalorian on Disney Plus.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize he did all of those. That's pretty crazy. He's had that many hits.
It is. Yeah. Speaking of other Christmas stories, do you have ideas for other Christmas stories in the future?
So not Christmas stories. I do have other children's book stories, but not quite a children's book story. I am working on participating in a Christmas anthology next year. And that story, I'm trying to work through it, but it's going to be something about this magical broken dwarf that was a gift and gets broken, but then because it was broken, it becomes magical, and it only becomes magical when it's passed through different people and given as gifts. So obviously that sounds very vague and I have a lot of details to work through it, but that's the next Christmas story I'm working on, even though it's not necessarily a children's book.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, I'm happy that you're going to be participating by being a part of the whole anthology thing.
Yeah. Yes.
We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back soon with more from Natalie and to hear her answers in my infamous Christmas survey. We'll be right back.
And now back to the show with our Christmas movie expert, Robert Nicholas.
So anyway, now that I've pretty much gotten to most of the questions that I've wanted to get to with you, it's actually now time for the second part of this episode, which is to have you go through a different kind of Christmas survey, which for all my listeners out there, these are not going to be the exact same questions. Some of them are some of the questions from my previous episode, but I'm switching it around just so that you're all not anticipating the same thing.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, so here we go. For one other famous Christmas story, A Christmas Carol, what is your favorite adaptation of that story?
Ooh, okay, I love The Muppet Christmas Carol.
Yeah, that itself is such a great version too. Because I'd say that my favorite version, I don't know if you've seen this one, is the 1984 George C. Scott version.
I don't think so.
Okay, but yeah, the Muppet Christmas Carol version itself is super funny. Mm-hmm. Really knows how to tell that story, and somehow actually manages to work in the Muppets without overshadowing the rest of the Christmas Carol story.
Yeah, and it doesn't, I feel like a lot of the Muppet specials or shows now, the celebrity cameos are the main thing, and I feel like in this story it was very well balanced between the humans and the Muppets.
Yeah, I can see that. Though for our next question, if you were in charge of a brand new Christmas Carol adaptation, who would you like to cast as Scrooge or a Scrooge-like figure?
Oh, okay. I have the perfect person. So I've been watching the show Dickinson on Apple TV. It's modeled after Emily Dickinson's life, and her dad in that show, it's played by Toby Huss. I don't know what else he's in, but he looks so much like a Scrooge, and I've thought that so many times watching that show. And throughout the show, he has this character arc of him being very harsh with Emily Dickinson and her writing and not approving it, and then later he starts to come around to it and loves that about her. So I feel like he even has this potential of the Scrooge story.
Okay, yeah, because even though I've yet to watch Dickinson yet, I do know the actor you're talking about, and I definitely think he would make a good choice.
Oh yeah.
Because personally, if I were in charge of a Scrooge, or at least a Christmas Carol type story, one actor I would really like to see play the role of Scrooge is actor Keith David. I don't know if you know who he is.
Who is that?
Okay,
What's he been in?
He was the villain on Princess and the Frog as Dr. Facilier. He was also in There's Something About Mary as Cameron Diaz's stepfather.
Okay, yeah, yep.
If you do listen to his voice, he's got just the right kind of gravelly voice that would make a good Scrooge. But he's played both dark and comedic, and I think a guy like him could really sell, just the right kind of Christmas Carol that I've always wanted to see.
Yeah, because you've got to be able to sell that really grumpy, like rough side, and then also the, transformed person. I think that's a big part of it, obviously.
Yeah, because some people actually criticized the Jim Carrey one for being a little too serious, even though I would tell them, yeah, if you haven't seen the Alistair Sim Christmas Carol from the 50s, Jim Carrey's just pretty much playing that version.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that.
But yeah, now speaking of also Christmas stories, here's another fun question for you. If the Muppets could take over another Christmas story, this can be any book, movie, TV show, what would you like to see the Muppets do?
Maybe the Santa Claus, and they could be the elves instead of kids, or like Bernard.
Okay, and would Tim Allen continue to play the role of Scott Calvin?
Yes, he would.
I kind of figured, because you need at least one human to counterbalance the chaos that the Muppets go through. Right.
No, yeah, I think he would still be human, and then they would be throughout the series, though. I feel like they would make interesting elves.
Okay, because, and of course, this is a different answer from my last one, but one story I always would love to see the Muppets take on is their own version of the recent Krampus movie that came out in 2015.
Okay, now I have not seen Krampus because I don't like dark Christmas movies, so I have hesitated and not watched it. But is it good?
It is. It's. I'd say that even though there are scary moments, one, it's meant to be a family film first because it's only rated PG-13. It's not an R-rated movie. And two, there is a lot of comedic elements into it. Something similar to. I did my first part on the episode. It's kind of like Gremlins, even though it goes a little darker than Gremlins. But it understands the idea that this family is just so broken, and yet the main kid here has lost his Christmas spirit, and yet accidentally summons Krampus to this family or so.
Is there a happy ending? Are you allowed to say that?
Well, it depends on. I don't want to spoil the ending right now, but let's just say that while there is a happy ending, it is also ambiguous to exactly what's going on. Because the film itself, let's just say it has kind of a Christmas Carol kind of ending.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so it's not just the monster comes in, kills everyone, and the end or so.
Yeah, that's good.
Which also makes me wonder, did you see the FX BBC Christmas Carol adaptation from a few years ago?
I did not.
Okay, because when I was talking to Ed Daly on the first interview, he absolutely loved that special, but I was telling him that I didn't, because that was a situation where I thought they focused a little too much on the dark and not as much on the lighter elements that need to come in, because would you agree that a good adaptation of A Christmas Carol knows how to walk the fine line between the dark and the light of the Christmas season?
Yeah, for sure. Because, you do have people who are missing the Christmas spirit, and the whole point of it is that we can all find it again. And so, you have to have both of those elements. But I think it's tricky if one outweighs the other, kind of. Obviously you want it to end happy, but you have to have that darker side to make it more of an impact when it is happy.
Yeah, exactly. Though speaking of which, going back to other Christmas stories, here's a fun little, just a fun little side Christmas story question for you. Because, we got 4 different Christmas stories. We have Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, the Nutcracker, the Polar Express, and Babies in Toyland. One has to go. Which one do we get rid of?
Okay, you're probably going to judge me, but I've never seen Babes in Toyland, so I'd probably get rid of that one because I don't know what it's about.
That's okay. To your credit, nobody knows what it's about because each adaptation keeps changing the story and rules because the original operetta that it's based on debuted back in the early 1900s. So it's in the public domain. Anybody can really do an adaptation of that. Mm-hmm. But over the years, we've had a Laurel and Hardy version from the 30s. We've also had the Disney version from the 60s. And even though my favorite version is actually the 1980s TV movie starring Drew Barrymore, Keanu Reeves, and that Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi guy, Pat Morita, as the toy master.
There's good people in that. I should watch it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies that I will warn you, if you're into it, it's one of those movies that's so bad it's actually very entertaining.
Okay.
Well, especially knowing later on that Keanu Reeves, who plays a goofy teenager, is going to end up playing John Wick years later.
Right.
Though, speaking of which, for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, do you count him as a part of Santa's official lineup?
Yes, I do. And I think part of that is because Rudolph, the song, is so popular. And like kids always, when they think about the reindeer, they're always like, oh yeah, Rudolph. And even though like I don't feel like it's necessarily portrayed in every like Christmas scene, in my mind, Rudolph is definitely like the head reindeer. This is funny. It's kind of a side note. But so my dog, he is crazy, full of energy, and he does like parkour in our house, basically like jumping off of couches and like launching off of the side of the bed. And through our training, we make him place on this placemat. And so all of that combined, we're like, you are training to be Santa's reindeer, and we're going to call you Placer the reindeer. So whenever we sing the song, we add in Placer in there somewhere.
Oh, it's awesome. Now, did you get a chance to listen to my episode on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer?
I have not yet.
Okay, because that actually goes into detail that Rudolph is technically copyrighted. So,
really?
Which is one of the reasons why, even though we got the famous song and the famous Rankin Bass special, we usually don't see Rudolph whenever they sell figurines of Santa and all these other things.
That makes sense now.
Yeah, and of course, speaking of Santa, another fun question: would you consider Santa a superhero?
Ooh. This is difficult. I mean, he's definitely like this larger than life character, but I don't know that he necessarily fights off evil. He just kind of like has a list of naughty kids and is like, okay, you get coal, but he's not really like saving a city or like saving mankind, but he is spreading kindness. I'm going to say no, he's not a superhero, but he's a larger than life character.
Okay. Now, speaking of Santa, out of all the we've gotten several movies and TV specials that have had different kinds of Santas. What have been some of your favorite portrayals of Santa?
Okay, I love the Santa and Elf, even though he's kind of scary, like not scary, but he's just like intimidating. Like I don't feel like he comes across as like this like super, super kind, like open arm Santa, but I feel like he portrays a very true, who is that? Ed Asner?
Yeah, Ed Asner.
Yeah. And then also I like the Santa on Miracle on 34th Street.
Which one? The Ed Gwynn from the old or Richard Attenborough from the remake?
Richard Attenborough.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I really, really like him as Santa. That's a good one.
Yeah, because it's funny you should mention that because Richard Attenborough too happens to be one of my favorite Santas because he himself has just the right kind of ambiguity where you certainly sense a lot of magical qualities within him, but the movie smartly never ever says exactly if he is a magical being. The only thing the only thing they prove in court is simply that he can legally be Santa Claus.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't know if you've seen the movie, not the Santa Claus, but Santa Claus the movie from the mid '80s?
I don't think so.
Okay, because that movie also has one of my favorite portrayals of Santa, who's played by David Huddleston, who the only other major movie people recognize him was as one of the Lebowskis in The Big Lebowski.
Okay, I haven't seen that. Sorry.
That's okay, because I will say that Huddleston's performance in Santa Claus the movie is a little different. He doesn't have the deep, booming, ho, ho, ho voice. He has a much higher-pitched voice, but because that movie, at least the first half, dwells into a different kind of origin story of Santa, that you at least get the idea of just where his gift-giving nature would have come from and exactly what really drives him to do his annual mission every year of delivering presents.
That's cool. That's interesting.
And again, I can't necessarily defend Santa Claus, the movie, as a great one. It is certainly one of those movies that is at least fascinating to watch because the atmosphere really works. So that one you should definitely check out. And even though I wouldn't say I'm the biggest fan of these movies, I do like Kurt Russell's portrayal of Santa in those Christmas Chronicle movies on Netflix.
I loved his portrayal of Santa. But yeah, those movies are kind of like, I want to like it and love it, but there's just something that I can't quite fully like embrace it. But no, his portrayal of Santa is like brilliant. I love that. Yeah,
because I have to really appreciate a Santa that's trying to be a bit more, maybe not necessarily edgy or so, but at least someone who probably would be willing to fight for you should have come to that or so.
Yeah, he kind of feels more like the superhero version of Santa.
Yeah, and of course, speaking of supers, here's another fun question. We've already had movies or Christmas movies with Batman, Shazam, and Iron Man. Is there another superhero you'd like to see get their own Christmas story?
Ooh. This just reminds me of that Friends episode with the holiday armadillo and like Chandler's dressed up as Santa and then Joey walks in dressed up as Superman. Sorry, side note. Maybe Wonder Woman.
Okay, because I know Wonder Woman 84, at least the end took place at a Christmas village or so.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because I don't know if you got around to seeing that or so.
No, man, I'm failing you again.
That's okay, but that's the whole point of the survey. It's just to have some fun and expose the truth.
Yes, you're the expert, so.
So, speaking of which, what are some of your least favorite holiday movies?
Ooh, least favorite. Okay, the Santa Claus 2 and 3 are not my favorites. I feel like the first one was just really so good that like you couldn't beat it, and it just went downhill as they went. What else? I love A Christmas Story, but I feel like now there are like some like little bit of racist elements that maybe could be fixed later on. Like maybe they could redo it. But no, overall, I love that movie. Other ones I don't like. I mean, I haven't seen Krampus, but I don't usually like darker adaptations, but I can't really say that one yet.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty open to most Christmas movies, and I usually enjoy them to some extent. Although I will say I'm not a big fan of like Hallmark movies. Those are just too like cookie cutter. Okay, obviously they're going to fall in love. Okay, this is happening. Like,
I get that because it is funny how a lot of people will detest the Hallmark movies, even though there's clearly an audience for them.
Right.
I mean, I guess I'd say it's hard for me to get mad at the Hallmark movies because they still clearly come from a place of passion, and I kind of compare them to B movies, where even though they may not be great movies, but they're clearly made for the audience that's going after those that really do like watching those similar romance stories over and over again.
Yes, for sure. And there's always a happy ending. So if you're ever looking for that, Hallmark movies are where it's at.
Exactly. And I guess when it comes to Christmas movies that either fail on me or don't do that well, I mean, even though Santa Claus 2, that can be subjective because I kind of like that movie because I do like the more romantic aspect of that.
Mm-hmm.
But Santa Claus 3, most people seem to agree that one's not that good because that one tries so many things all over the place, and yet it also has no focus. It's just a lot of people just don't seem to talk about that one for a lot of reasons. And
which one had the like mimicked Santa, like the fake Santa that went around?
Santa Claus 2.
Okay, the second one. Yeah.
Right, and I'd say that for me, the other holiday stories that also fail on me are the ones that are either boring or just don't put me in the right spirit. Because for me, one Christmas movie that I cannot stand, even though nobody's ever heard of it, and yet it's now on Disney Plus for anybody to watch. It's another 80s movie called One Magic Christmas. And
of course, I've not heard of it. So.
Yeah, but basically the premise of that one revolves around a struggling family that I guess is not only financially struggling really badly, but they're about to be kicked out of their house just out of the holiday season. So it already starts on a pretty downbeat note.
Yeah.
And then the whole premise is that the mother, played by Mary Steenburgen from she was the stepmother from Elf, James Conway.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who I like and can be really good in her other performances, but in this performance gives off a not only a very downbeat performance as if she's just not in the holiday spirit, but it's clearly a very phoned in performance as if you can tell that this was more of a paycheck performance.
Oh, okay.
And of course the whole movie revolves around the two kids trying to get the Christmas spirit back up. And even though it does end on a happy note, the movie takes a lot of downward spirals that just really sinks you further into the depression pile. And by the time you walk away, you kind of feel just as depressed as all these characters are. And that to me is like the worst mistake you can make with any holiday movie is when you walk away feeling more bad than anything.
Right. You need to walk away feeling at least some sense of hope. Yeah.
And even at one point, Santa makes an appearance in the movie, but the Santa in that movie is pretty old and frail, and that is not how I want my Santa.
Yeah, you need him strong. It's still like pudgy, but strong.
Exactly, and because I will give Richard Attenborough this from Miracle on 34th Street. Even though he was old in that movie too, but he was still he still had enough life in him to move around and use his cane if he had to.
Right.
Yeah, and but even when it comes to like really bad Christmas movies like Santa Conquers the Martians or Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny, those movies are at least so strangely offbeat bad that they just become fascinating creatures themselves.
Yeah.
Considering that Santa and the Ice Cream Bunny is essentially one part a Santa Claus story and the other part a operatic retelling of Jack and the Beanstalk, just because the movie clearly didn't know how to fill in the rest of its screen time.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't watched that one. So you're making a ton that I need to add to my list, even though I may not love them all. I kind of want to see these.
Oh yeah, I mean, at least those ones are at least worth your time as long as you go in just with that mindset, knowing that you're going to get something that's so offbeat that it's actually kind of funny.
Yeah.
But going back to on the other subject of other Christmas stories, the Polar Express. First of all, what's your opinion on the movie?
Okay, so I grew up with this book and loved the book. The movie came out when I was a little bit older, I think. So I just had the book in my head and it didn't quite match up, but it's still like a great version of the story. And I do think it's a great film, but I just feel like it didn't, I don't know. There was something about it that just didn't quite give me everything I needed.
Okay, and is that one you wouldn't mind seeing remade in the future?
Yeah, maybe. I feel like it was too long or something. Like there were just too many parts to it, and I don't know.
So, how'd you feel about its use of motion capture animation, where they use live actors to motion capture to give it an animated look? Because a lot of people seem to be indifferent some like the look, some find it a little too strange looking or so.
It is strange looking. I didn't realize that's how they made it. But yeah, I like watching it. You're kind of like, wait, is this animated? How is this done? So, I mean, it's interesting. I don't think it's my favorite type of animation.
Right, because I know Zemeckis did the same thing with the Jim Carrey Christmas Carol, and I think there were a few other movies made under that same mindset, but that whole style just seems to have died off in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Considering that at one point, Zemeckis, the guy who did Polar Express and Christmas Carol, was even going to do an animated Yellow Submarine movie using that same style, and yet it got canceled. And even a part of me wonders just how that would have looked, at least close to live action.
Yeah. Okay, so do you watch Ted Lasso?
I do watch Ted Lasso.
Okay, you know the character Roy?
Yeah.
There's so many people who are like, is he like CGI? And I think the same thing. I'm like, he doesn't look like a real human. And that's what all of this is reminding me of.
I mean, do you believe in that theory that he just might be like an imaginary figure that the whole team seems to, or maybe the whole world imagines or so?
I hope not, because I love his character and I don't want to even go there.
That's okay. But yeah, and you saw that Christmas special, right?
Oh my gosh, yes, I loved that Christmas special.
Well, that's good because that too just gave me a lot of joy. Even though when I saw it, I think that episode came out like in September or October. Or something.
It was odd timing.
It was odd timing, but most people didn't seem to care because the next morning the press was praising it. Everybody on social media was praising it. And I think that's just something that people still like from those holiday specials, that you really walk away, feeling really good.
Yeah. And those episodes are just so different than like the regular show, no matter what show it is. And it just brings this like super positive energy that you don't normally get in every show, Exactly.
And, and before I forget, two more questions related to the Polar Express. First of all, let's say the Polar Express were to come to your neighborhood. Would you rather be a passenger on that train, or would you want to be working on that train?
Okay, funny story. So there's actually a train in Indiana that is quote unquote the Polar Express. And my cousin just took her daughter on it. And there's all these like actors who act out the story and elves on the train and Santa. I think based off of that, I would want to work on the train as like an elf. I've worked as an elf before at Bass Pro Shops, so I have a little bit of experience, but it just sounds so fun to like deliver hot chocolate to kids and like just create this magical experience as they're riding along.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, the next question, most people do remember the famous hot chocolate song. First of all, excuse me. First of all, you like hot chocolate, don't you?
Yes, I love hot chocolate.
All right, and here's another important question. What do you take with your hot chocolate?
As in, what do I eat with it?
Yeah, what do you eat with it, or what else do you like putting into it or so?
I mean, I prefer it being made with milk over water. And
Smart choice.
I will occasionally throw marshmallows in there, but they're not a must. I kind of think it's better on its own. But my favorite kind of hot chocolate is peppermint hot chocolate with either a candy cane in there or it's like already flavored somehow. And then eating with it, I personally love eating Spritz cookies. My dad and I make the cookies that come out of the press every single year, coated in so many sprinkles, and they're a nice contrast to the chocolate.
Oh, yeah, that all sounds good. I kind of want some hot chocolate right now. I may have to go to Starbucks after this interview.
Yes.
So closing it off towards our last question here. Mm-hmm. What is a Christmas movie that you don't think really needs a remake of any kind?
That I don't think needs a remake.
It can't be remade. There's always the case that it may have already been remade, but you don't think it really needed one.
Okay. I think if they remade Elf, it would just not be the same. Like, I feel like Will Ferrell portrayed the character so well that if someone tried to recreate that, I think it would kind of be like, oh, roll your eyes. Obviously, we know what you're trying to do. But I think because that hadn't been done before in the way that it was, that made it a novelty and made it a classic. So I don't think anyone should ever redo that one.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, did you know that Will Ferrell turned down a pretty big paycheck to reprise the role for a sequel?
I did not.
Yeah, because, well, like with any movie that makes money, Warner Brothers was hoping that they could get, more Elf movies. But I guess Will Ferrell turned it down simply because he just felt like that there was no way they were going to be able to recapture that again.
Yeah, it is. It's very special. And I do feel like a lot of times when you keep making more sequels and next ones after next ones, it's just like the quality falls with it. So I think that was probably a smart move.
Yeah, plus I don't know if you saw it, but a few years ago, there was even a TV animated remake of it that had Jim Parsons in the buddy role.
I did see that. Yes, that was odd.
Yeah, and of course what's strange is despite it, trying to replicate the Rankin-Bass style, nobody seems to talk about that anymore. They always refer back to the original Elf.
Yeah,
but I totally
they did
agree.
It right.
Yeah, and I mean, the one movie that I said shouldn't be remade, even though it's ironically being redone several times, was Home Alone.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. I feel like the original is just so good and they keep doing like similar storyline after similar storyline. And it's just like none of them are quite what the OG was. Well,
that's what I mentioned one before. As soon as Home Alone came out, that actually inspired a lot of other children's films to do the same trope of kids putting up booby traps to stop whoever the villain is.
I mean, it worked really well, so I see why people wanted to.
Yeah, and but even then, I've always felt like the Home Alone was one of those movies that's just lightning in a bottle, that where everything just accidentally fell into place, considering that even when they got John Williams to do the music, because his score to that movie is one of the nicest sounding holiday scores that I've heard. And yes. I keep thinking had they not gotten him, but they stuck with their first person, the film itself wouldn't have had that extra oomph factor to it.
Oh yeah, it would be totally different. Like the music makes up so much of that film.
Right, and of course, the whole coincidental thing with all the other Home Alone sequels is that they're still essentially the same story. I mean, even if you listen to the commentary on the first Home Alone movie, even director Chris Columbus and Macaulay Culkin admitted the second movie was primarily made just as kind of a cash grab.
Okay.
Which is proof that even with the original team all set up, it's still not the same movie that you're going to get over again. And,
right.
And with Home Sweet Home Alone, which my other episode with the other podcasters will go into much more detail about that. But let's just say that's a movie that tries to cover up the mistakes that modern families would have with that scenario, but really backfires.
Okay. Yeah. Even the cover doesn't look enticing to me. I'm just like, this is not my Home Alone. Like, what are you trying to do?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to be curious to see how a lot of kids respond to it, because I'm not even seeing a lot of people talking about it that much within my own circles or on social media. I mean, maybe I'm in the wrong area of social media or so.
I mean, I'm sure you're in a Christmas area, so I feel like you got it.
Yeah, and even then, this is why I'm also curious to see how kids respond to it, because when I saw Home Alone as a kid, that was actually the very first movie that I still have vivid memories of seeing when I was only 3 years old.
Wow.
So that film actually really holds a very special place. And, for some kids, this new Home Alone is going to be the first thing that they see.
Yeah.
Even though if I had my own kids, I probably would have always shown the original over any of the sequels or remake any day. Right.
You're like, no, let me show you the right one.
Exactly. But overall, you were fun. This was a really fun survey to take you through.
Thanks so much. I had a lot of fun too.
Good. And again, having read at least the text version of your book, it sounds like this is going to be a lot of fun. I think families are going to really enjoy reading this. Do you know? Well, I know you said the illustrations weren't ready yet, but did you have a tentative release time period when this may be coming out?
So it's supposed to be released before Christmas still. I don't have an actual date. I know they're putting a rush on it currently. So as soon as it's out, I'll share it on my social media pages, which are all at Natmosphere, and that's NATMOSFEAR. And then the book will be available on Amazon as well.
Okay, good. And those are the places where all my listeners can go to if they want to know more about your other writing and other upcoming stories coming out?
Yes, I post blog posts about, things that I'm going through. I try and take readers on a journey with me when I write, and I post about my other books and any other projects I'm working on, any publicity things. So yeah, just follow me at Natmosphere and you'll stay in the loop.
Okay, good. So my listeners, I hope you really enjoyed listening to this interview. I got many more coming up later as the show progresses. But hopefully keep the Christmas spirit alive 24 hours a day, 365 days a week. And I will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on this sleigh ride into the magical world of Christmas movies. Check us out for weekly rides into your favorite Christmas classics and their histories. Be sure to give us a positive review on iTunes if you like what you heard. And don't forget to follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram for updates and special news. Consider subscribing on Patreon in order to help keep the show going and to gain access to some special gifts not available to the public. Merry Monday to all, and to all a good night. See you next week.
Cut. Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.